Chapter 6. Old Age. Section 1. Arthur and Mary's noisy neighbours, the Elliots, didn't seem to get on well with anybody, least of all with each other. About a fortnight after they'd moved in, Arthur and Mary were woken up at about 2 o'clock in the morning by the sound of shouting and swearing. After a while, Arthur got so fed up that he picked up his shoe and banged on the wall with it, but to no effect. Mary got rather worried because it sounded as if someone was being murdered, and asked Arthur if he thought they should call the police. But as soon as she'd said that, they heard the Elliots' front door slam, and then their car being started and driven away. For 5 minutes or so afterwards, they could hear Mrs. Elliot crying. But the sound gradually died down, and Arthur and Mary eventually got to sleep. Mr. Elliot was never seen again, and shortly afterwards a for sale notice appeared outside the house. Happily, however, Arthur and Mary's relationship with the Sampsons on the other side was quite a different story. They became extremely friendly with Judy and her husband Jim, who was a teacher at the local comprehensive school. Mary quite often looked after Judy's 6-year-old son, Paul. The morning after Mr. Elliot had left his wife, Mary went next door to tell Judy about the previous night's drama. She was rather surprised to find Judy dressed up in the uniform of the WRVS. This is an organization that was formed just before the Second World War to cope with emergencies arising out of air raids, but is now concerned mainly with social work. Judy explained to Mary that she was going to deliver hot meals to old people in the district. This service is known as Meals on Wheels.
And then we heard the door slamming and he drove off in his car.
Well, I never. With a bit of luck, you'll never see him again.
Let's hope so. What have you got that uniform on for, by the way?
Oh, didn't I tell you?
No.
I do the Meals on Wheels once a week. It's my turn today. Oh, it's a damn nuisance, actually. Lynn Watson, who usually does it with me, is down with the flu, and there's nobody else, so I've got to do it on my own.
Why don't you let me give you a hand? I've got nothing on at the moment. I'd rather like to, actually.
Would you really? Oh, that would be a help. I think you might find it quite an education. Oh, look at the time. We ought to be off now, really. Goodbye, then, Mrs. Atkins. Take care of yourself. See you next week. Now, let's think. Where have we got to go to next? Oh, it's that Mr. Arnold. He's a crotchety old devil. He lives in one of the council houses just round the corner. Ah, here we are. You have to knock. His bell doesn't work.
What is it? It's no good you coming round here trying to sell things to me. I haven't got any money.
It's me, Mr. Arnold. Mrs. Sampson. I've brought your dinner. He's a bit hard of hearing.
Oh, it's you, is it? I thought you came on a Tuesday.
It is Tuesday, Mr. Arnold.
No, it isn't. It's Monday. I'm not that old. Anyway, you're late. And who's that? I've never seen her before. She's not one of those busybodies from the Social Security, is she?
No, she's not, Mr. Arnold. She's my friend, Mrs. Newton. She's very kindly offered to help me this morning because Mrs. Watson's got the flu.
How do you do, Mr. Arnold? You've got some lovely roast beef today.
Well, I never put my teeth in before I have my dinner. In any case, I don't think it's any of your business. Are you sure you're not from the Social Security?
No, Mr. Arnold. I said we've brought you some lovely roast beef and Yorkshire pudding.
I don't like roast beef. You know I can't chew it.
Now, come on, Mr. Arnold. It's lovely and tender. You'll enjoy it. And there's some delicious apple tart and custard for afters. Now, don't let it get cold.
I don't want it. You tell those people in the kitchen to give me shepherd's pie next time. I like that. My Mabel used to do me a lovely shepherd's pie. You can clear off now. Haven't you got anywhere else to go? No, I hate people standing over me while I'm eating my dinner.
Okay. Goodbye, Mr. Arnold.
My goodness.
I told you, didn't I?
Section 2. This passage is taken from an article in Choice, a magazine for people who are retired.
Irene, Brain of Britain, Thomas, thinks that retirement can be tougher on a man than on a woman. She expounded her views after suggesting that people should think about retirement 5 or 10 years before it happened. 10 years is not too long. She said, "It's a radical change anyway, both for the man and the woman, but particularly for the male. A woman can go on after 60, doing the same round of chores, cooking, shopping, a little bit of gardening, things like that, and moreover, things which she has more or less done most of her life. But for a man, it is utterly different. He has that great gap from 9:30 to 5:30, or whatever his hours of work were, to fill." Irene herself is not retired, although her husband is. They live in a pleasant, leafy backwater in Chiswick. Half a mile away, the packed morning commuter traffic into central London was thinning out and being replaced by the never-ceasing but better-spaced procession of vehicles of all kinds going about the day's work. But at the Thomases' home, one was aware of magnificent chestnut trees lining a quiet suburban street and the green of the playing fields at the end of the thoroughfare. Beyond the fields, there was a sparkling fringe. Unbelievably, it indicated the muddy Thames responding to the sunshine. It seemed an agreeable enough setting in which to toss a question to Irene about how her husband's retirement affected both their lives. He's now in his mid-60s and reached pension age last year. Did the end of his teaching career make any difference to their domestic routine? Irene said, "Yes, but in a nice way. He's just a very generous man. And he said, 'While I'm at home, it seems silly when you're still working for me not to give a hand around the house.' He does these duties extremely well, because, for one thing, men are much stronger than women. They can shove the furniture about." Was there any allocation of tasks? "No, not really. He just helps a lot with the housework, which for me is a godsend." Some wives, I pointed out, find that they're so accustomed to their routine of housework that it's almost a comfort for them to carry on doing it. Irene said, "I would advise the ladies in that case that if their husbands are doing something about the house that they know they could do better, keep your mouth shut. If you criticize him, he mightn't do it any more. I think it's so nice to be helped, even if there is a little bit of dust left behind. What's it matter, for heaven's sake?" She added, "My husband's thoroughly enjoying his retirement. He has a lot of outside interests. One thing he's doing is to learn, or rather relearn, Italian. He was in Italy during the war, and he loves the people and the country. He really wants to speak the language well."
Oral Practice 1. Practice saying these sentences from the dialogue.
"By the way, that uniform on for, by the way. Got that uniform on, for, by the way. What have you got that uniform on for, by the way?
Tell you? Didn't I tell you? Oh, didn't I tell you?
Sell things to me. Trying to sell things to me. Coming round here trying to sell things to me. It's no good you coming round here trying to sell things to me. Any of your business. I don't think it's any of your business. In any case, I don't think it's any of your business. Eating my dinner. While I'm eating my dinner. Standing over me while I'm eating my dinner. I hate people standing over me while I'm eating my dinner.
Oral practice 2. Listen to the dialogue and then take the part of A.
Hello. Aren't you working this morning, then?
Didn't I tell you? I retired on Friday.
Good Lord. I didn't think you'd be retiring for another 5 years or so.
Well, I'm 65, you know.
Well, I never. I thought you were still in your 50s. What are you going to do now, then?
Well, you know, I'm not sure, really. I haven't quite made up my mind. My wife wants us to open up a boarding house on the Isle of Wight.
That sounds quite a good idea. You'd work hard in the summer, and you could relax in the winter.
Yes, but I'm wondering whether it'd be too much for her. If we did that, we'd be rather a long way away from the family. We do like seeing the grandchildren, you know.
There is that, I suppose. But surely you'd be able to see them in the winter.
Well, it's not only that, but I'd rather like to try my hand at running a small market garden. I've always rather fancied that.
Do you know anything about that sort of thing? I wouldn't have the first idea how to set about it.
Oh, I'm a real country boy, you know. I was brought up in Essex.
Well, best of luck to you, whatever you decide to do.
Now, wind the tape back to the beginning of this dialogue. And this time, speak at the same time as A. Remember that A speaks first. Now here's the dialogue again, and this time you take the part of A. Begin now.
Didn't I tell you? I retired on Friday. Well, I'm 65, you know. Well, you know, I'm not sure, really. I haven't quite made up my mind. My wife wants us to open up a boarding house on the Isle of Wight. Yes, but I'm wondering whether it'd be too much for her. If we did that, we'd be rather a long way away from the family. We do like seeing the grandchildren, you know. Well, it's not only that, but I'd rather like to try my hand at running a small market garden. I've always rather fancied that. Oh, I'm a real country boy, you know. I was brought up in Essex.
Oral Practice 3. Listen to Stanley Ayton talking about his retirement, then answer the questions in your book.
Right, you've been retired for some time now. Can you tell me what your life is like these days?
Well, at the present moment, I would say my life is quite pleasant, because it's over a year since my wife died, and I've got over that now to a certain extent, and therefore my life is reasonably pleasant. I have my own sort of things that I can do, mainly my garden, various people whom I know, my crossword puzzles, which I do every day, which keep me going, and quite frankly, I think, as far as possible, life is quite pleasant.
How does your day go normally?
Normally, I don't get up till 9 o'clock. I make my own breakfast and get the papers. I take the Times and the Guardian, and I look through the headlines of those, and then I'll do the Times crossword puzzle. Then I'll do my washing up and clearing up, do the stove, and by which time it's just about time for me to go to the Old People's Luncheon Club. I have to leave home at 11:30, and I go there for my lunch and meet other people. There are the same table that I have my lunch. There are other 3 gentlemen, 2 of whom are older than me. They're over 80. And the other one is younger. But for an hour we sit there and have a very good meal and discuss all sorts of things.
And you always talk to the same people?
Yes,
yeah.
There are 4 of us there that are always at the same table, same together, and we have...
is there any kind of rule about who can belong to this luncheon club?
I don't know. I applied, quite a long while ago, but they said there was a waiting list, but it was just after my wife died that I was told that I could go. Now, whether that was because my wife had died, I think that had something to do with it, but I was told, and then I went there, and I looked round and saw one table, and there was one man sitting there, and I went and I said, "Do you mind if I sit here?" He says, "Yes, for God's sake do," because I said, there won't be any women coming then. He was an old Scotsman. So I sat there, and then another gentleman came, and for quite a long while there were only 3 at that table. Then another one came, and there are 4. And we've been, the 4 of us, at that table for the last few months.
And so you've struck up a very good relationship with them?
Very good.
Do you know who runs this luncheon club?
It's run by... The council run it, but the waitresses, at least, I shouldn't call them waitresses, those people who wait upon us, are from various societies. You have one day it'll be the WVS, another day it may be the Jewish ladies, another day it'll be somebody else, but they're all voluntary workers, but you have one man there who looks after the place, and another lady who does all the dishing up of the food, which is brought from a central canteen. But the ones who wait upon us are all volunteers, and you get to know them.
Oral Practice 4. Complain about what people are doing. Listen to the examples first.
I say, could you tell him to stop playing that trumpet?
Must you play that trumpet?
Must you play that trumpet?
For God's sake, that boy's scratching your car.
Must you scratch my car?
Must you scratch my car? Now you go on in the same way.
I say, could you tell him to stop playing that trumpet?
Must you play that trumpet?
For God's sake, that boy's scratching your car.
Must you scratch my car?
Tell those children to stop making that noise.
Must you make that noise?
No, that man's kicking that cat.
Must you kick that cat?
That boy's throwing bottles into the road.
Must you throw bottles into the road?
Now they're throwing stones at that old lady.
Must you throw stones at that old lady?
Can't you stop him revving that motorbike?
Must you rev that motorbike?
I can't stand him tapping that pencil.
Must you tap that pencil? That's the end of Oral Practice 4. Oral Practice 5. Express your willingness to do something if the first speaker will do something else. Listen to the examples first. We must clip the hedge and mow the lawn sometime.
Well, if you'll clip the hedge, I'll mow the lawn.
Well, if you'll clip the hedge, I'll mow the lawn.
How about doing the dusting and the cleaning?
Well, if you'll do the dusting, I'll do the cleaning.
Well, if you'll do the dusting, I'll do the cleaning.
Now you go on in the same way. We must clip the hedge and mow the lawn sometime.
Well, if you'll clip the hedge, I'll mow the lawn.
How about doing the dusting and the cleaning?
Well, if you'll do the dusting, I'll do the cleaning.
I suppose those letters will have to be typed and sent off.
Well, if you'll type them, I'll send them off.
There are the potatoes to be peeled, and the peas must be shelled as well.
Well, if you'll peel the potatoes, I'll shell the peas.
Somebody's got to go to the bank, and the bread's got to be bought.
Well, if you'll go to the bank, I'll buy the bread.
I'm afraid there's all the washing to be done, and the house to be tidied up.
Well, if you'll do the washing, I'll tidy up the house.
Somebody's got to wash the glasses and wipe the tables.
Well, if you'll wash the glasses, I'll wipe the tables.
It's time to put the lights out and lock up.
Well, if you'll put the lights out, I'll lock up.
That's the end of Oral Practice 5. Oral Practice 6. Describe what's happening in the pictures in your book. Listen to the examples first.
What's happening in the first picture?
There's a monkey eating a banana.
There's a monkey eating a banana.
What's happening in the second picture?
There's a man painting a wall.
There's a man painting a wall.
Now you carry on.
What's happening in the first picture?
There's a monkey eating a banana.
What's happening in the second picture?
There's a man painting a wall.
What's happening in the third picture?
There's a woman pushing a pram.
What's happening in the fourth picture?
There are some men fighting.
What's happening in the fifth picture?
There's a man playing the piano.
What's happening in the sixth picture?
There are some boys playing football.
What's happening in the seventh picture?
There's a girl riding a bicycle.
What's happening in the eighth picture?
There's a man rowing a boat.
That's the end of Oral Practice 6. Oral Practice 7. Dictation. First, cover up the passage and listen, please.
Barbara's grandfather was rather an extraordinary character, who lived to the ripe old age of 97. He retired when Barbara was still quite a little girl, and came to stay with her parents for a few years in a remote part of northern England, where they were living at the time. On his arrival, he announced that he had no intention of vegetating for the rest of his life. He was going to go into the nearest town the following day and see if there was anything going. Barbara's parents were rather amused, but naturally they didn't say anything for fear of offending him. They were astonished when he returned home in the evening and told them that he had got a job as a part-time electrician, a post which he held until 5 years before his death at the age of 97.
Now you'll hear the passage again, and this time you must write down what you hear.
Barbara's grandfather was rather an extraordinary character, who lived to the ripe old age of 97. He retired when Barbara was still quite a little girl, and came to stay with her parents for a few years in a remote part of northern England, where they were living at the time. On his arrival, he announced that he had no intention of vegetating for the rest of his life. He was going to go into the nearest town the following day and see if there was anything going. Barbara's parents were rather amused, but naturally they didn't say anything. For fear of offending him. They were astonished when he returned home in the evening and told them that he had got a job. As a part-time electrician. A post which he held until 5 years before his death at the age of 97.
Now, here's the passage again.
Barbara's grandfather was rather an extraordinary character, who lived to the ripe old age of 97. He retired when Barbara was still quite a little girl, and came to stay with her parents for a few years in a remote part of northern England, where they were living at the time. On his arrival, he announced that he had no intention of vegetating for the rest of his life. He was going to go into the nearest town the following day and see if there was anything going. Barbara's parents were rather amused, but naturally they didn't say anything for fear of offending him. They were astonished when he returned home in the evening and told them that he had got a job as a part-time electrician, a post which he held until 5 years before his death at the age of 97.
Now, check the dictation in your book. That's the end of Chapter 6.